All right, we have a really important guest that I wanted to make sure that we spoke with today. If you've been following our reporting here and our interviews here, Steven Donziger has been just aggressively prosecuted and persecuted by Chevron. He won a gigantic, historic settlement against that oil company for their poisoning of indigenous people. He is now facing sentencing in his criminal conviction for contempt of court. He was found guilty. It's a misdemeanor charge. It should be nothing. He also, look, to my reading of the facts, isn't even guilty of contempt of court. The whole situation is completely insane. He's been held in home confinement for over 2 years now for the tiniest of alleged infractions. So he's facing sentencing tomorrow. Here's Steven Donziger. Steven, so great to see you. So great to have you this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Can you just give us an update on how you're doing, number one, and what you're expecting to happen tomorrow?
Sure. Well, today is my 786th day in home detention with an ankle bracelet. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in Manhattan, and I helped, one of the lawyers who helped indigenous peoples in Ecuador win a $9.5 billion judgment against Chevron. The company has launched a massive retaliation campaign against me, which included a demand that I turn over my computer and cell phone to Chevron, which is unheard of, and turn over my entire confidential case file. I appealed the order, and while it was on appeal, a U.S. judge locked me up, claiming I was in contempt of court. And it's now been over 2 years. I was tried in a misdemeanor case without a jury while I was on home detention. The judge, who's a member of the Federalist Society, which Chevron funds, found me guilty of misdemeanor contempt of court. I contest that. I don't think I'm guilty in the least. But she's going to sentence me tomorrow here in federal court in Manhattan, and she can put me into prison for up to 6 months. I hope it doesn't happen. We're asking for her to release me with time served, because the longest sentence given any lawyer in U.S. history in New York since the federal court was founded in 1789 is 90 days of home confinement. And I've been here now, as I said, 787 days. So, we're hoping she'll do the right thing. We're going in good faith, and we're going to ask her to release me.
So 787 days in your house, and now you're facing up to 6 months in a federal prison, all for a contempt of court charge. And here's the thing I don't really understand, Steven. You haven't faced a jury at any time in this. Like, at no point have the facts of your case been actually presented to people. How does this happen? How does this work?
Well, I think there's a lot of things happening to me that normally would not happen and should not happen according to our laws and our Constitution. Among them, I believe I do have a right to a jury. I mean, I was first sued by Chevron for fraud in an underlying racketeering case, civil racketeering case, after the U.S. attorney rejected it, refused to prosecute me. It was based on false evidence from a paid Chevron witness that I supposedly bribed the judge in Ecuador. There was no evidence that happened. The witness later admitted lying. But the judge, Lewis Kaplan, who's a former tobacco industry lawyer, convicted me without a jury in a civil case of trying to defraud Chevron. He then imposed millions of dollars of fines on me, basically bankrupted me. Chevron cleaned out my bank accounts. I'm dependent on my wife and my defense fund to survive at this point. And he then appointed this other judge, a friend of his, Preska, who's a member of the Federalist Society, to try my criminal contempt case, and she locked me up pre-trial. No, that's never happened to a person in U.S. history on a federal misdemeanor charge, someone with no criminal record like me. There's a lot of irregular things, and she got around the jury requirement, which, as you know, is required in a criminal case in the United States, by saying she would not sentence me to more than 6 months in prison, which makes it a Class B misdemeanor, which literally is the most minor possible offense in the federal criminal code. So she avoided a jury, and I think that's not right, given that I'm facing prison. But Chevron kind of tricked up the system here. And the other notable feature that is just shocking to me is Judge Kaplan, when he charged him with criminal contempt, his charges were rejected by the SDNY, by the U.S. attorney here in Manhattan. He then appointed a private law firm to prosecute me, Seward and Kissel. And it turns out this law firm has Chevron as a client. So essentially, I'm being prosecuted by Chevron. and this is scary. I just want to, this is bigger than me, because this is basically the first corporate prosecution in U.S. history, and people need to pay attention, because I think this is the playbook for the fossil fuel industry to go after lawyers and activists who are successful in their advocacy and holding these big polluters accountable. It's to prosecute you directly if they cannot convince the normal federal prosecutor to take up the case. And, it can happen through these contempt charges where judges can appoint private prosecutors, but you're not supposed to appoint someone who's conflicted or someone who has an interest in the outcome. So this is extraordinary. So when you ask about a jury, I feel like my rights have been denied. Just this week, by the way, the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention issued an extraordinary ruling, basically demanding the U.S. government release me immediately and pay me compensation because of this arbitrary deprivation of my liberty. So people are paying attention. We have 68 Nobel laureates who've demanded my release. Now these 5 international jurists from the United Nations. This has, I think, become an embarrassment for the United States of America, for our federal judiciary. It's wrong on so many levels, and I'm demanding that Judge Preska release me tomorrow and allow me to take off my ankle bracelet for the first time in, 2 years and 2 months.
Has there been any response from U.S. authorities to that UN ruling?
It's extraordinary you ask. Basically, there's been no response. And there's really been no engagement. I mean, the ruling has been transmitted to the United States government through the State Department. But, I think I said this on an earlier interview with you guys. I mean, Joe Biden needs to step up. I mean, you can't, do good things on the climate issue while human rights lawyers who deal with polluters are being locked up in your own country. So the U.S. government has not responded. By the way, this is dangerous, because under the Trump administration, there was virtually no engagement at all with international legal bodies. Joe Biden came into office saying he was going to fix that and engage on human rights issues. And here's a major human rights issue on U.S. soil. And so far, the Department of Justice and the State Department, as far as we can tell, have ignored this decision, which, by the way, legally obligates the United States. I mean, this is based on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights. These are international human rights treaties signed by the United States. And their provisions have the effect of binding domestic law in the United States. So you can't just say, oh, this is some international thing. This is based on U.S. domestic law, based on these human rights treaties. So our view is they're obligated to release me, and they're also obligated to compensate me monetarily for the deprivation of my liberty, the loss of income, and all the other damages me and my family have suffered over the last 2+ years. So we're going to pursue this. And if Judge Preska doesn't release me tomorrow, we're going to pursue all possible avenues, obviously an appeal. Plus, we are going directly to the Biden administration, to the Department of Justice, to demand full implementation of this incredible decision. By the way, it's all, the United Nations, human rights bodies almost never rule against the United States on human rights issues. This historically has been known as a country where the rule of law is respected. So this is just an extraordinary turn of events. The language they use is incredible. They call the facts in my case appalling. They criticize Judge Kaplan, who charged me, Judge Preska, who locked me up, as displaying an appalling lack of objectivity and impartiality. And again, it's an embarrassment. I'm embarrassed to be, for our country, that someone is being treated this way, a human rights lawyer. I'm also, personally aggrieved because it's me. I'm the person, and I can't even walk outside my apartment without court permission. I have a 15-year-old son. I can't be a full father to him. That he's just started his 3rd year of school while I'm in home detention wearing an ankle bracelet. I just spent my 3rd straight birthday, locked up in my home. I mean, for a misdemeanor. Okay, this is obvious retaliation. It's being orchestrated by Chevron, by a Chevron law firm from behind the scenes, because they face huge financial risk from the Ecuador pollution judgment, by the way, which we won successfully, been affirmed by 28 different appellate judges down in Ecuador in 2011. And they're just coming after me to both disable my advocacy, but also to send, in my view, a message of intimidation to other human rights lawyers and other human rights advocates who would even think about holding big polluters accountable. So this implicates everybody. It implicates advocacy in our country. It implicates what society we want to live in. And I'm asking people for support, support for me personally, my family, and for the principles we all hold dear. that we can live in a free democratic society. You know, we're having a rally at 8:30 in the morning, by the way. For those of your listeners and viewers who live in the New York area, please come. It's the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan at 8:30. There's going to be a great group of speakers, and then we're all going to go into court and bear witness in Judge Preska's courtroom at 10 a.m. to see what she decides to do with my sentencing.
Steve, either tomorrow, just to be clear, you may be going to federal prison, or you may be able to leave your house for the first time in almost 800 days. Is that what we're looking at? And what is your expectation, knowing that at every turn they've thrown things at you that you never could have imagined?
Well, that's a great question. And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I wish I did. It's stressful not knowing. You know, it's stressful knowing I'll be there with my son, my wife, and my, sister and family members and supporters. And I'm going to walk into that courthouse and I don't know if I'm coming out. She could literally step me back in the courtroom on a misdemeanor. Again, oh, by the way, there's never been a lawyer who spent even one day in jail for this offense level in U.S. history. Okay, so it would be extraordinarily, I think, inappropriate, not to mention cruel, to lock me up tomorrow. But, the way this case has gone, I'm always obviously hoping for the best and maintain optimism, but I am prepared for anything. And psychologically, I've put myself in a position where if that does happen, I expect to be able to deal with it. But obviously I don't want to go to prison. I really need to get back to my life, to my work, to my human rights advocacy. And, even if I'm guilty of these offenses, and again, I don't believe I am, and we have a great appeal. But even if I'm guilty, don't you think, 2 years and 2 months of home confinement is enough punishment for a misdemeanor contempt charge where I was in good faith protecting the confidential information of my clients, indigenous groups in Ecuador who have been poisoned for 50 years by Chevron's pollution? And isn't it ironic that it's the human rights lawyer who's facing prison, whereas the Chevron and Texaco executives who made the decision to dump literally 16 billion gallons of cancer-causing toxic waste can just live with impunity? I mean, what is that about? So, we have some serious issues, I think, to think about through this case, but on a personal level, we're really hoping for the best, and we're really going to go in there in good faith and ask Judge Preska to reach for her better angels and release me with time served.
We're certainly hoping for the best, too. We're going to watch with great interest what happens tomorrow. What's been done to you is unconscionable. As you just said, it's an incredible personal burden and affront to you, but it also exposes that so often in our society, you have elites who commit flagrant, destructive crimes and face no accountability. And the ones who seek to hold them to account, they're the ones that are punished. You're a primary example of that. Stephen, thank you for spending a little bit of time with us today. We're grateful for it.
Can I just mention one very quick quick thing, which is
sure.
If people want to learn more or help, please go to our website. It's called freedonziger.com. We have a defense fund. If you can help, great. But you just sign up, join our campaign. We have thousands of people, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective with you guys.
The link in there.
Yeah, we'll put the link in the description as well. Stephen, thank you so much. We're cheering for you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Our pleasure.
It. Thank you guys so much for watching. Those of you who already watched the show, our YouTube segment and more, you know what we're dealing with here in terms of demonetization, being able to cover the news, covering whatever exactly we want. We can only do it with your support. There's absolutely no way in order to keep the business going by just relying on YouTube revenue. So we rely on you. The premium link is right there in the description, and we appreciate you all so much.
Also, I have an exciting announcement, which is that we have a new partnership with the Daily Poster, of course, started by David Sirota. We're going to have a regular weekly segment with them breaking some of their latest stories. You guys know we already rely on them a lot because they are always doing journalism that is falling under the radar, especially looking at corruption. I know they have a great new story about Josh Gottheimer and exactly why he's so opposed to this reconciliation bill, the money that's being put into his bank account, his campaign bank account, I should say, for the moment anyway, and how he's one of the top recipients of Wall Street cash. So we're going to have a weekly segment segment with them. Those are going to post every Friday. So you guys know normally we don't have a full show on Friday. Those segments will go up on Friday. So we're really, really excited about that. And they're going to feature those segments in their newsletter that goes out to their audience. So a little bit of, cross promotion, but we've long loved supporting and highlighting the work that David and his team are doing over there at Daily Poster. They definitely deserve your support if you're able to give it. So super excited for that first segment to drop tomorrow. So look for that. And we'll have lots more for you this weekend as well. Love you guys so much, and we'll see you back here next week. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.